If there's one thing I want to bring to the forefront of this review of this new base model M2 MacBook Air is how well it's managed to keep up with my creator-focused workflows. Editing 4K video, exporting edited RAW photos, and flying through apps like InDesign and Lightroom has been a dream. And I seriously thought I'd get some form of RAM issues or to be affected greatly by thermal throttling. But no, this base model seemed to handle everything I threw at it, and I only found myself being slowed down in very specific intensive moments. So let's not waste any time and get into why this M2 MacBook Air has completely blown me away. Oh, and if you like the wallpapers in this video, I'll link them in the description below. Before we start though, I want to put it in some form of perspective. My current Mac setup is a MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019, which is an Intel i9 model, and my desktop setup is the M1 Max Mac Studio with 32GB of RAM. So I own two very capable machines, and I'm used to how they work and respond to my daily tasks. So my baseline of performance, if you will, is already quite high. I decided for the duration of this review to stop using those computers completely and to turn my desktop setup into a MacBook Air powered one, so I was totally immersed into the experience. And I also haven't just been sitting in my office either. This is a laptop, so I've been working on it as much as I can away from the office space entirely, in cafes and food places where I'm actually relying on it being a decent laptop in all manners of the word. In fact, I've written the bulk of this review and edited parts of this video sitting in my local coffee shop, because first and foremost, the MacBook Air needs to be a fantastic laptop experience. Let's talk about the new design first. This MacBook Air borrows heavily from the MacBook Pros of 2021. Gone is the sloping design that we're used to in favour of a more squared off industrial feel, and I think it looks all the better for it. It's not quite the mini marvel that the 2015 super tiny MacBook was, but it's a good look and I'm a fan of it. The screens here are also new. It's a 13.6-inch liquid retina display with smaller bezels, and it's way brighter than before too, which is a great upgrade. Of course, that does mean it inherits the notch design, but that does house the new and improved 1080p webcam, which has got the improved mic array as well, which just makes video calls on this MacBook a lot better than the previous generation. And in a Zoom first world, it's really appreciated. Input wise, we're still stuck with two USB ports on the left side, but now they're joined by the MagSafe port, which comes with a wonderfully colour matched cord. Sadly, there's no SD card slot or HDMI port, which means you're still going to be using a dongle for most things, which is a shame considering the right side of the laptop only has a headphone jack. However, I did find the speakers, which are hidden within the hinge, to be really quite decent. They don't quite match up to what the Pros can put out, but for what they are, and considering you can't even see a trace of them on the laptop, I don't think you can complain. Most importantly for many of us though, the keyboard here is really great. I've really enjoyed typing on this since I've had it in hand, and the tactile response of the keyboard is just lovely. The whole package is also remarkably light. I've been taking this everywhere with me because it almost feels silly not to. This slips into pretty much any bag without weighing me down at all, and it's small enough to comfortably use on a coffee table or just having it open sitting on your lap. It's a perfect machine for being on the go with. But honestly, to bring it back to the start of this review, it's the performance of this M2 base model that has shocked me the most. And no, I'm not going to hit you with a bunch of benchmarks because while they do have their place, and they really do, they never truly showcase what living with a device is really like on a day-to-day level. But this 8GB of RAM powered MacBook Air has kept up with everything I've asked of it, and surprisingly well. Editing multiple streams of 4K in Final Cut has been a breeze, using Lightroom to edit and export RAW photos has been easy, and even having Chrome, Photoshop and Spotify all open at the same time as Final Cut hasn't even begun to slow it down, and I was totally expecting it would. In fact, when I first got this Mac, I was immediately thinking of how I'm going to have to adapt my workflow to ensure this laptop can keep up, but I haven't needed to. Sure, the RAM swap happens almost immediately and it gets really aggressive when it needs to, and I'm also sure switching to Final Cut and making use of the new media engine within the N2 chip has helped massively from my last experience with an M1 Pro powered MacBook, but to see these results in a fanless design is kind of crazy. And to put that power level into more kind of perspective, I edited this video you're watching right now mainly on a 4K external monitor in Final Cut with the better quality mode switched on with no issue at all. It was honestly so surprising. And I know at this point you're probably just thinking, well, you're an Apple fan, of course you're gonna like it. But I can honestly only talk from my experience of using this MacBook Air, and it's seriously been amazing. The only time when I can see a clear difference between this and say my Mac Studio is in the video render times, in which the M1 Max chip runs circles around the M2, but that's kind of understandable. As soon as I hit render on the M2 MacBook Air, things slow down pretty massively, and that's the only time where you can see the M2 really throttle itself here due to there not being a fan on the inside. Put it this way, if you are worried about performance on this laptop, don't be. If you're using it for any less than I am, you'll be more than fine with it. And if you are looking to edit a lot of videos or just long videos, then you probably already know this isn't the right laptop for you. And it's not. You should be looking at the Pro models, but more on that later. I also wanted to shout out the battery life in this section because it's so good. This will absolutely last you all day with very little headaches. Even if you end up spending hours editing video or photos, you'll get through a day, no worries. And if you're doing more classical computing tasks like browsing the internet or watching videos, then expect a minimum of 2 days. It's got really incredible staying power. Talking of how well it can handle Final Cut Pro, that's where I want to talk about today's sponsor, MotionVFX. MotionVFX is an online store which specialises in Final Cut Pro plugins on animation, graphics and video production, all while keeping it as simple as possible to use. If you're looking for a specific animation, graphic style or even colour grading tools, you're likely to find it on the website. And best of all, for people like me, they also work with content creators to make packs based on their style, which is awesome. I've been using the M Keynote pack, which was made in collaboration with iJustine. This is an Apple-inspired pack which captures all the minimal smooth graphics and animations they use within their keynotes. I've actually been using it within this video too to help illustrate points, so you've probably already seen it in action. Luckily, they're really easy to program and use too. It's all done within your editor and it's not too much of a jump from applying regular effects. There's so much more to discover on the website too, and it's not just for Final Cut, there's support for DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro as well, so you can get your hands on these regardless of what your preferred editor is. So if you do fancy checking them out, head over to the link in the description, and of course a big thank you goes out to MotionVFX for sponsoring this video. If there's one thing surrounding this base model of MacBook Air, it's the slower SSD speeds that are present in this 256GB model over the previous MacBook Air and the higher storage configurations of this M2 model too. And I wanted to address them because I think for the most part, they're completely blown out of proportion. And look, I don't want to sound apologetic or like I'm defending Apple here. Putting in a slower SSD is a genuine downgrade and I don't like it as much as the next person, but I've honestly not noticed it. If no one had said about this or I didn't know it, SSD speeds wouldn't have even come up in this review because it's been such a non-issue. However, I did keep an eye on it in general while using the Air, and the only time I could notice any difference is when transferring large files from my SSD, and even then the difference wasn't huge. So I think such a small amount of people are going to notice that difference. Secondly, there was a lot of talk about how the M2 thermal throttled, and I think that needs addressing too, and I'll address it like this. 95% of people buying this laptop won't even get close to thermal throttling at all. As mentioned, I only saw it when exporting large video files from Final Cut and nowhere else, so you're only going to see it if you really push this laptop for extended periods of time, and I know most people buying it probably won't. So I don't think any of these issues are really worth writing home about. If you know they'll affect you, you'll know not to get this, but if you've never heard of them before, it's probably never going to happen to you. Look, there's no denying this is an expensive laptop. It is. But I think what Apple has managed to wrap up into this package is an absolutely wonderful machine, and I've really enjoyed using it. Yep, it's not right for everyone, and I sadly have to put myself in that camp. I'm editing videos pretty much 90% of the time, and I'm gonna need a fan device for that. But if I wasn't and just wanted a solid laptop with incredible battery life that can push out remarkable power when it needs to, this is where I'd go. And that pretty much rounds up my review. If you're thinking of grabbing one of these M2 MacBook Airs, then let me know in the comments below, or if you've already got one, pop a like too on the way out, that'd be massive, and I will see you all in the next one.